Tonight we have before us our first district councilman and the president of the council, Councilman William Godwin, our second district councilman, Cozy Witherspoon, our third district councilwoman, Councilwoman Mary Brown, our fourth district councilwoman, Vice President Ty Atkins, our fifth district councilwoman, Linda Barnes Cardwell, and our sixth district councilman, Dwight Williams. And also we have our attorney, Cloris Lay, councilman at large with us also. We will get started. We will have our overview at this time by Mr. Bittner.
This is Steve Jenkins with the assistant city attorney. I'll be doing the overview. I don't think AJ Bittner is here.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll be doing the overview. Thank you. So the purpose of this ordinance is to, we have to go through this process before the properties that we have listed can be disposed of by the Redevelopment Commission. This is pursuant to an agreement between the Indiana Attorney General, the former DUEA, and the Redevelopment Commission. These properties have to have an opportunity for public comment before we can dispose of them. And also, in addition to that, there were a list of properties that I initially added to this ordinance as an exhibit. That was a list of 8 properties, but the Redevelopment Commission has since decided to dispose of all of the properties that they have. So I'm going to amend that with a much larger list if I'm able to. It's a list, I believe the number is roughly 600 or so properties. The Redevelopment Commission would like to do this all at once instead of doing it piecemeal, little by little with multiple ordinances. They have plans to get rid of all of these properties. My knowledge, I can let Gilbert King speak more on that. I believe he's also here. But there's a plan in place to get these properties disposed of by the Redevelopment Commission through their normal legal process, which they transfer properties to the tax roll and things of that nature. That is the purpose of it. Go ahead.
So what are you planning on doing with these properties when you say disposing of them?
Oh, well, that means that before they sell the properties back to someone else in the city, or I believe in some cases there are just neighbors who are neighbors of the lot that's being disposed of or being sold, and they want to acquire that property. That's the case in many of these situations, but it's also just for general. When I say dispose of, it means just sell, or they sell it back to someone else.
So how many did you say?
There's roughly the total list that I want to amend is roughly 600 or so properties. So yeah, that's the amendment, because when I initially submitted this ordinance back in December, the list I had attached was only 8 properties, or somewhere between 8 and 12.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. So I have an amended list. I have that with me now, but I didn't get a chance to submit that before. I figured I would just submit it here as an amendment, or amend it here to just include this more expanded list of properties.
Well, I do have some concerns about that big number of properties being brought to us, and I'm pretty sure these properties are all over the place. I would like to pretty much see them put in some type of categories and brought to the council so we can cycle through it a little bit better. If this is through the side lot program, I think that should be a group that should be brought to us. But to give us 600 properties and for just to think we're going to be able to go through all of these properties and know where they're going, I think we can track it a little bit better if it was designated in certain areas there. So I would like to see it split up.
Okay. Just want it more organized.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Definitely. I definitely understand that. This was a decision made a little after I submitted the initial ordinance. Yeah, I can definitely make sure that happens before we submit it. Or so just so I'm clear, did you want us to as far as whether do we want to keep it in committee, or are we going to let it go for third reading and then bring it back, or do you want me to submit an entire new ordinance, which is either way is fine?
I will keep it in committee, and we can talk through it through committee which direction we would go at that time.
Okay, that's fine with me. Thank you very much.
Yes, and I will go with the pleasure of my colleagues, but I think it should be split up. I think
agree.
That's a pretty big number to bring before us to just to approve on.
Yeah, I agree. It should be split up.
Okay, no problem. I can definitely make sure that happens.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Lay.
When you use the term split up, I mean multiple ordinances, not split up in one ordinance.
That can be done also, yes. I agree with you, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry.
And I'd like to even limit the number of properties on any single ordinance. You just went 50 times the number you said it possibly was. I would think anything beyond I think a grouping, I mean, I'm not sure how you're gonna do this, but a grouping of, I don't know, no more than 50, and that's a lot. I mean,
Sure.
why do they need 600 done? They just wanna go away and don't wanna talk
Well,
to.
I can answer that. Just to my knowledge, I guess they wanted to get it done all at once because they have plans to eventually do something with these properties. To dispose of them, they have plans to sell them. They wanted to avoid the multiple ordinance kind of setup. But I can understand the council's concern. 50 at a time sounds reasonable to me. If that's what the council wants to set as the upper limit, that's fine.
Yeah, that's a lot, 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's even a lot. I'm just saying they just don't want to come back and talk to Mr. Brewer is what I keep hearing.
You might be
Godwin,
right.
for some reason they don't want to talk to the leadership of the council. I don't understand. That of course was a joke. I mean,
Gotcha.
bring back less than 50.
Okay. So is there a specific number, like we want less than 50? You can just let me know now. I can definitely arrange for the next ordinance to have a much lower limit, whatever the council decides here,
Okay, I'd like to take input from my colleagues going around. So Councilwoman Atkins and Councilman Godwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a request, Attorney Jenkins, in terms of the way that you present the data. So if I would agree that I think 50 should be the limit in terms of how you present it to us. But on the attachment Schedule A that you sent to us, I think that you should also include the district that the property is listed within. And then also for knowledge base, if you can explain the process in terms of how this works for my knowledge. More specifically, I wanted to know if this request or something that is in parallel to this request also goes in front of the Redevelopment Commission.
Yeah, well, Attorney King is here as well, but I mean, I can maybe punt that to him. But generally, the redevelopment commission has their own process by which they dispose of properties. I can let Gilbert King speak more on that. He's much more familiar than I am.
Yeah, as to that, we go through a process by which the properties open up for bids or proposals. We accept the proposals, we review the proposals, and we make a disposition on the proposal on the property, on the specific property. So we do go through a process. There's notice, opportunity to submit proposals, a review of those proposals by the board, and a recommendation to the board by the administrative personnel, and the decisions are made at that point.
Okay, so it's still going over my head. So is the first step in the process you come in before the council, which is now, to ask for approval to even dissolve or the property?
Even dispose of the property. And then
that's step one, and then you go in front of the council, I mean, in front of the Redevelopment Commission, or you project those to the public for bid?
Send a notice out for proposals, have a time limit for submission of the proposals.
Okay.
Review and open the proposal before the board, redevelopment board meeting, read them out loud, whatever they are. Okay. Then they're submitted to the staff for review and recommendation. And then once the staff reviews the proposals, they make a recommendation to the board at an open meeting, and the board makes a decision at that point.
Okay, thank you, Attorney King. Last question for you. So what is the process to notify the public of the opportunity to bid on these properties?
Advertising in local newspapers.
Only in the paper? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pursuant to the state statute. We do it pursuant to the state statute.
State statute, okay.
Yeah, the statute requires notification published in a paper of local circulation in the county.
It has to be paper, okay.
No, it doesn't have to be paper, but we also carry it on our website too.
Yeah, I guess that's the key. I wanted to make sure that it was, because then maybe we can also put that on our page if you also use social media, that we could do that, because that's one of the feedback that we get, that the public never knows when there's an opportunity to bid on these particular properties, right? So we just want to make sure that we are communicating and getting that out there.
Sure.
You're right.
Sure.
Can I also say something? I'm the Deputy Director for Redevelopment.
Yes.
Listed within those properties are also for donation for the neighboring housing for the neighbors that are located next door. Any of those lots that are under 25 feet are considered for donation to the neighboring homeowners who keep their taxes up and actually take care of the properties. Those properties are also slated for donation also.
So is that like the side lot program?
Like the
Yes.
side, yes, ma'am, for the side lot program.
Oh,
So,
okay.
within that list, quite a few of those properties are listed for donations for the side lot.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilman Lay.
as you donated, are you informing the public of the tax liabilities on those properties? They used to be very high.
Yes, they do know that once they obtain the property, that the property has to go back on the tax roll.
Right, but it can't be combined with the current property. It's a separate tax that would be applied to that property. Sometimes it's very high. The value of the property you're giving away may be $200. The taxes could be much, much more than that.
Well, once we donate the property to them, they are aware that there's taxes going to be added. It's up to them once they get the property that it's that it's their property and that they are going to be taxed on the property. So.
Okay, my question wasn't clear. Before you give them the property, why not at the same time tell them what the tax liability will be?
We don't tell them what the tax liabilities are.
No, I'm asking you to. Why don't you?
Okay, that's something that we'll have to look into.
I was once told that I could have the property next door to me, but the tax was in the thousands. You know, I could buy it for 200. Apparently, you've been unable to sell them. So now you're going to give them away, but you also have this huge tax liability that's coming. I think you should sort of tell them. Another question I have, okay, let's say you do not sell in the proposal the 50 properties. What happens to the balance? Let's say you only get proposals to purchase 30. What happens to that 20? Mr. King?
Those properties go back into our inventory, and if the statute provides for a process of negotiations after 30 days, and the property has not sold. So after 30 days, we can negotiate a sale price for the property.
Will you inform the council of your negotiations prior to, I guess, selling the property at this new negotiated rate?
You say, will we?
Yes, I would, at least me, I can only speak for myself. I'm anticipating that the bid will generate more funds than the negotiations will.
Right.
So here you have these 20 pieces of property. You say they go back to inventory. To take them back out of inventory, do you come to the council and say, well, now these are what's remaining, so that Mr. Jenkins don't come back with 50 more, and now we got 70 properties. And then of the 70, you don't get rid of 50, so he comes back with 50 more. Now we're at 100. That, you see what's happening? It's
right.
Geometrically, progression is going on here.
So what you're asking is that at the negotiated price, or whatever that price is, you would want it to come back to the council. Is that?
Well, I think you should first tell us that you didn't get rid of the 20. I'm just using that as the number.
Okay.
And then that you're about to negotiate.
Okay.
Yeah. And then probably something so we don't get any argument about whether you negotiated fairly. How do you determine your negotiations? How do you do that?
Well, generally, we have some base price for what it's worth. And a person may contact the redevelopment commission and say, I want this property is on the list, on the inventory list. We start at what our appraised value is. And and go from there. I mean, they may counter, we may counter back, and we go from there, whatever we think is the best, the highest and best amount that we can get for the property. That's our objective.
Now, and that is one of the questions that has been asked of me regarding the side lot program. What happens if I buy one of those lots? How much am I going to have to pay in taxes? Well, you're going to have to pay whatever the taxes are on that particular piece of property. So sometimes, you know, you're going to have to pay more than what you maybe thought or imagined you would pay.
Councilman Godwin?
Thank you. So let me just first say, I agree with Councilman Lay and Councilwoman Brown as relates to the taxes, because if they aren't able to claim the homestead exemption or any other exemptions, if it's at that point, it'd be investment property, subject to the 2% or 3% cap, not the 1%. So it certainly could be a tax liability. And I think they should even have to sign a disclosure when they purchase the property to ensure that they're aware of that tax liability if they aren't able to seek legal counsel to have those pins joined. Because in some cases, if the property is not beside you, you wouldn't be able to join it, and you would be subject to a higher tax. So I think that some type of disclosure should go out to them. Secondly, I want to get clarification from Ms. Pirtle, and I see that Mr. Reeves is on as well. Is it the anticipation to use some of these properties for the Fix One, Get Two program, which I'm excited about? I think I've heard a little bit about it publicly. I know it's going to debut. Is that part of what we're trying to do?
Yes, some of those properties are.
Okay. And are most of these properties in a rehab-ready condition? I know, because one of the concerns I have with these properties sometimes is that the appraised value is far less than the cost of bringing it up to habitability, if that makes any sense, right? So if the appraised value is $50,000 after the rehab, but the acquisition cost and the rehab cost is greater than $50,000, then that's obviously a problem. So what percentage of these properties would you say are in a ARV or after rehab value position where they will be equal to or greater than the appraised value?
Majority of these properties are vacant land.
Okay.
No, it's no structure on them.
Okay. I think Mr. Reeves
I can truly say that probably about 15% has structures on them.
Okay. Mr. Reeves, I cut you off.
Before I think you stated something that may not be correct, and Mr. Reeves is not an attorney. I do not believe they will allow you to join these properties at all. They will remain separate. In other words, that lot will remain a separate lot unless they've changed the procedure that I was made aware of several years ago.
You can join. This is Eric Reeves. Attorney Lay, you can join the key numbers for the side lot program. You have the ability to take that side lot that you get from redevelopment and blend it in with your regular lot. So you pay one key number, one tax bill. And
I would like to see that in writing. That is changing the procedure altogether. In other words, you cannot do a new survey. In order to do what you would have to be required to do a new survey, and a whole new lot system would be created. I was told you couldn't do that now. So I would like to see the source, certainly where that's done, or you're almost hook-winking people.
No. So we're not hook.
No, I don't, Mr. Reeves, I'm not questioning it. I just would like to see it from a more authoritative source, such as in writing from an attorney or the recorder or someone that says you can do what you're now saying you can do. I'm just asking for the source, other than, and you may be absolutely right, but at this point, at best, I can take it only as your opinion.
Surely.
I-
So it's the recorder. I'm sorry, it is recorder, and we can get you something from the recorder to validate what you just said.
Well, I believe you would have to get it from the auditor. The recorder only records.
Okay, then the auditor.
Yeah, saying that you're doing this, not the recorder.
Okay.
I know
Recorder-
that, I've seen it done. I've had clients that have done it, but I do think it should be in writing. It certainly makes things more efficient, and I think to the concerns around taxation, if the properties are adjoining, it would be beneficial, but you do have to spend money. You're definitely gonna need a lawyer, you probably have to have a new survey done and so forth.
So one of the things that we verbally say to people who win a sign lot or we award a sign lot program is that, if there's taxes, there's things that you may get the lot for free, but certainly you have the responsibility to pay the taxes. That's the whole objective, is to get the lot back on the tax rolls. Many times they're very willing to get it on the tax rolls because they've been taking care of the property for a long period of time, and they want to do something with it. So that's something that we verbally tell them. And I think, Carol will have to see, but I'll look at the paperwork, and if it's not on there, then we'll have to memorialize it more definitively so they understand that. And that's not a problem.
Here. I have a question here. Reeves.
Mr. Chairman,
I
most
Councilman
of
Lay
this
and then
property,
Councilman Godwin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Lay, then I'm gonna ask.
Most of this property is under 25 feet, is up 20 by 25 by whatever it is. You can't build on it. And anything you're stating verbally around property, especially if you're talking about ownership, is insufficient. It has to be in writing. All I'm asking for at the time that it is shifted, that you acquire, and that's simply an inquiry probably of the auditor or the assessor, well, the auditor and the assessor probably, what the tax liability is on the problem. In other words, you're giving them something that they probably wouldn't want depending on the taxes associated with it. In other words, I know the lot next to me, I don't want it. The tax liability is too great.
Well, yeah, you're right in terms of the tax liability, but there was a lot next door to me, and it was 25 feet, and we bought it, and we pay the taxes on it, and it's not, the taxes are not exorbitant, but we do pay the taxes on the lot that was next door, because you couldn't do anything with it anyway other than what we've done with it. You couldn't like build a house or anything with it on it, So,
Your house is about 4 or 5 times bigger than mine.
So,
Y'all ready with
Business out there again.
here we go.
That's that
But
shot.
that's the truth. Well, okay, and that may be only 3.9 times as big as mine.
Madam Chair.
That's
Councilman
totally
Godwin.
different than me sitting here paying the taxes on this lot next door to me.
Oh, you can do
Madam-
it. Councilman
Madam
Godwin.
So I see that, I had a couple more things I wanted to address, but I see that Mr. Reeves wants to respond, and I think Councilman Williams was asking a question too, so
Yeah, so
I'll come back.
often the side lots are large enough to build on because their former houses used to be there. This is sometimes after we've demoed the house because it burned down, they left, and the houses are large enough the property is sufficient enough to handle within the zoning laws to handle a whole house. So they're not, and that's the majority of them that we give away in the side lot program. They're not insignificant 25 by 25 lots.
But if they're that big, why wouldn't you sell them?
Because
Why would you give a person a lot that is large enough to construct something on? Why wouldn't you attempt to sell that lot?
Because they have been available for a long period of time, Mr. Lay, and that's why we have so many lots. It behooves the city to get it back on the tax roll in some fashion rather than let it lay fallow and collect no money. So,
I agree. I agree.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I was just gonna continue. So yeah, I think that it totally makes sense. And of course, we know we could also do a zoning variance if someone did want to construct outside of the guidelines that we have in terms of the frontage.
Correct.
Other thing I wanted to ask about, I know that we're about to get to the place where the redevelopment members are, I guess, sworn in for a new term and officers are elected. Is that correct?
We did that already.
Okay, so I wanted to confirm that according to IC 36-7-14-7C, it says each redevelopment commissioner before beginning his, I'll add, or her duties shall execute a bond payable to the state with surety to be approved by the executive of the unit. The bond must be in the penal sum of $15,000 and must be conditioned on the faithful performance of the duties of his office and the accounting for all monies and property that may come into his hands or under his control, etc. Is that something we do? And if so, how?
No, and I'll tell you, I was on the board for 10 years and was never asked to do it or obligated to do it. But if you send me that IC code, then we can definitely put that into practice. I wasn't aware of it.
All right. Mr. Reese, thank you. Attorney King, do you have any comment? Because this is state statute, so it would suggest to me that any duties that were done without having met that requirement could be in jeopardy, right?
Well, I know many years ago that was part of a process that was taken care of by the controller's office, the bonds for all the members. I don't know when it may have stopped. And as to an opinion as to whether or not that will make any of the things or activities of the board illegal, I would have to do a little research on that at this point.
All right, thank you. And just one final request. Somebody, I see the Attorney Pohl is on. I'd like to have a copy of the ordinance where the council, I guess, created or authorized the existence of the Redevelopment Commission. Can someone get that to me prior to the next council meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of the actual ordinance. That would have to be pulled from the clerk's office.
Can you help me with that?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely help you with that. That's definitely I mean, I'm assuming you're going back several
Probably.
decades. Yeah, I mean,
So is he asking for that the council authorize the commission, because it's a redevelopment commission is a state statute to have that, municipalities can have one. Are you looking for the council authorization? Because I don't think you need council authorization.
I think you do. I think the council has to actually create or allow that to exist within the city. Attorney King?
Yeah, the state statute allows a city to create the redevelopment commission, and it does it through a municipal ordinance. There's some ordinance somewhere.
Right.
That
I'd like to see it
passed by the clerk and so forth. But it was all, the authority comes from the state statute, and the actual creation comes from the municipal ordinance.
Thank you. I'd like to see that. I appreciate it.
Mr. President, it's our clerk that has possession. All we have to, the council has to do is ask for it directly from the clerk.
Thank you, and I will do that. I thought maybe the attorney or one of the attorneys may have just had it at hand, but I will make a formal request. We got a lot of attorneys on here.
Well, yeah, but you go to as president, you certainly can ask your clerk. It is your clerk.
You're right. You're right.
To provide any ordinance or resolution.
I will do that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Is there any other question by any other council member?
Mr. Chair,
Councilman Williams.
I have a very quick question. Thank you. Are these properties listed by district so that we can get the information to our residents?
That is a request that has been made by Councilwoman Atkins that they will be listed by district. Yes, we're making sure that happens.
Do you know how soon we can get the list?
They're gonna have to go back and revise some things, so I'm gonna put this back into committee. It will not take place on third and final. So this will come back in committee and we will hammer out all the details inside the next committee meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask, just briefly, earlier on, we had you had Attorney Jenkins that was providing the overview, and then the requests. I wanted to clarify, I guess, the requests that are made of him as it pertains to this particular ordinance. The request is that it be broken down by just by the districts, not by the 25-foot lots, correct?
Go ahead.
I would think we
So
would
Attorney
want as
Paul, if I
much.
could clarify, I think what we requested is, Attorney Jenkins stated that there was over 600 properties, right, that he wanted to do at once. So we wanted, we don't want to look at 600 properties at one time. We want to see increments of 50. And then we wanted to make sure that the information that was provided in the ordinances per 50 also included what district that the property resided in. So regardless of the, I guess the square foot that the particular parcel has, that's how we want to see it broken down.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify because I was unclear whether or not the position of the committee was that it be brought in different, by different ordinances to, essentially transfer them from the GUA to the Redevelopment Commission by district, or if it was just, the intention was still to potentially transfer those through this one ordinance and then just have the properties broken down in increments of 50. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I don't think we specified that.
No,
That's why I wanted to make sure that when we come back, we're well prepared for whatever the council's pleasure is.
How many ordinances are you talking about?
Right.
Well, we would prefer one. One.
Oh,
and
no,
then,
no, we're saying we don't want one.
Well, that's
We don't want one. No. Each little movement, in other words, generates an ordinance. At best, you would have 12 ordinances if you were doing 50 at a time.
And that's what I wanted to clarify. It was just whether or not there was going to be several ordinances, or if it was just going to be broken down and then still produced in one ordinance.
Well, my suggestion is multi-ordinance. Also, you tell us what was not sold under the proposal. What is this so-called inventory? We need to know that.
That's
at
true.
the same time, I thought that's what Attorney King had more or less said he was willing to do. He would tell us what is being negotiated out of each 50, assuming it's 50. I'm just using it as a starting point. We want as much information, I believe, as you can possibly deliver to us.
Yeah.
That's a fair request. I just wanted to make sure whatever you guys were requesting, we were going to produce it at the next meeting.
So you clear? We clear?
It's going to be broken down in 50. It sounds like there's. All right, my understanding is you essentially want it broken down in increments of 50, and then I'm assuming what might be best is to break that down also by district. So
yes,
increments of 50, and then also have it divided by a district, so each council member
increment of ordinances. Each ordinance would carry whatever the number was, not to exceed 50 ordinances.
Yes. Yeah.
Each 50 would be in a separate ordinance.
Okay.
So is there a waiting list that people have requested for the side lot program?
Yes.
There's not.
Mr. Reed, I don't know.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. Carol's going to answer that.
Okay.
Yes, we have several people that has been waiting for years for the GUEA lots that we have been holding off because of this public hearing, that we can't donate the lots to them because of the public hearing. So we keep holding them off for the properties.
Well, I don't suggest that we hold them off any longer. I suggest if we would start there first with the 50 increments of the ones that's been waiting for the side lot program, and we will move and get those out the way. Whatever they are in, you will bring that first 50 back to the council, and we talk our way through there.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask a question to her comment, going forward, how do we improve that? So what is the reason why there wasn't a hearing, sooner than the acquisition of 600 and something properties. How could we make sure that that doesn't happen and there's no bottleneck going forward?
That
So
was our
one,
reason of bringing them, I'm sorry, Eric, go ahead.
no, go ahead. So
That was our
one,
reason of bringing them all forward now, so that we wouldn't have to keep going through this process of bringing 50 now, 50 later. We was doing them all at once, so that when we do come forward to be able to dispose of the properties, we was having a public hearing now, so that we wouldn't have to keep coming back and forth of bringing them.
But I
But you
believe the
just said that it
question,
was
yeah,
years though, right? You
right.
just
so,
made, you
so
made a comment that, excuse me, you just made a comment that there's people been waiting for years. And so we don't want
When I
that.
mean years, I mean at least 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, we don't want that because that's the whole term of a council, 3-4 years, right? So what needs to change in terms of the frequency that we just made a comment as a body that we don't want to see 600 properties at one time. So I think we should, I'm going to finish my comment first if I can. Thank you. And so I just want to make sure that whatever needs to happen, whether it's, I don't know, by ordinance or it's just making sure that the redevelopment commission comes in front of us more frequently, that we communicate so that, again, that bottleneck is not done because that's not the way that we want to operate moving forward.
So one of the, if I can interject, if the Madam Councilwoman is finished. One of the things, the bottlenecks early on in this process is the Attorney General with the GIA properties had certain timelines and specifications that we could not act. And maybe Attorney Jenkins was going to speak to that. So we were not, they did not release these properties for us to do anything with them or any program with them. He didn't for a while. So, and that's, I don't know the timeline, but many can't, when the properties became available, it was announced that they were available, but the Attorney General did not allow the Redevelopment Commission to release them for any activity until they decided that they were going to be put into play for either a side lot or whatever, to resale, and to use the proceeds. Actually, we're using the proceeds for the facade program, and that's special verbiage that we had to ask the Attorney General to honor and to bless. So that's one of the reasons why the bottleneck.
Attorney Jenkins, you have anything you want to add?
Right. No, Eric much covered even more than what I was going to say, because I just wanted to address how we got to 600 properties. I mean, we won't necessarily get to this amount through the GUEA properties anymore because the GUEA is gone now, and the Redevelopment Commission is more or less just holding these properties. So we're not going to necessarily come up on another 600 properties and where we're just sitting around with nothing to do with them. I guess that's what we're going to address. But Eric covered everything else that I could have said on that issue.
I know this is talking about the GUEA property, but are you all still holding a number of properties from the Mayaco agreement too? Is that right?
So so we still do have property. So with the get one fix one, get two program, we are going to go to different areas in the city to apply that program. The current program is a pilot program, and we will take the information and data from this first block of people who have applied. There's 23 groups who want to participate into the program. And so we will look at it, but we will go through the city, and it will cover some of the Mayaco pieces of property. And if need be, these 25 by 25, if they're joined by a property that can be used to develop, then we'll, try to put them together. So the objective here is to get properties in Gary that we have that are plentiful, to get them back on the tax roll. That's the bottom line. And we can, get the AV up, to get them, where they're in neighborhoods where they don't look good or there's lots. That's the objective.
So how many properties are you all holding through the Mayaco?
I am not sure. I don't recall. I don't have that number. But something I can get to you. I know. The overall is, Gary, we have too many properties that the redevelopment owns that we need to get rid of. So that's really the bottom line.
Yes.
and trying to rebuild the city. So whatever number it is, it's too many for a municipality to self-own and not have any movement on.
Okay, sounds good. I would like to really sit down and have a conversation with incentive plans for first responders, for getting new residents to move here and to build here. We have not seen a substantial number of homes being built inside our city, especially with our younger generation, millennial. They basically don't want the older stock. They want something new. And I think we need to really work hard with putting an incentive plan to get people to start building inside of the city of Gary. I know a number of years they did a major incentive plan on the west side of Gary, and it has turned out to be a beautiful neighborhood that's still standing and homes that are still occupied. I think we need to really look real hard into that and push a strong incentive plan for home ownership to build inside the city of Gary. We need to take advantage of our opportunity that we have with the migration of the people from the Chicagoland area that's moving this way, not just moving through Gary, but actually to start building and living inside of Gary.
So, as Chair, if I can comment on that. So, of the mayor's economic development plan, market rate housing is number one of the Magnificent Seven, we call it. Getting people to move here, we believe that the city needs 4,000 dwelling units to really activate it. And this is market rate housing. So we believe that we do have several plans. You know, they're not yet tied to incentives, but certainly that is the backbone of what the mayor administration is trying to do, is to get the people to move back here. The Fix One, Get Two is just one of the tentacles of that plan, but there's many. Building new homes in if you look at the State of the Union, it talks about building homes in the first district that is highly desirable, and where the number of homes has not been for sale has not been this low for years, and then and also in what we call Center City, in taking advantage of millennials, and just like you said, and Generation Z and X who work downtown and who've been lured downtown by big companies like McDonald's and Google, who could catch the South Shore in somewhat of a reverse commute and to live in Gary, where it's less expensive. So that is first and foremost on the administration's horizon to do, because we can't have anything else unless we have people who have income to pay for retail stores or commercial entities to be here.
May I say something, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Well, I certainly agree with Mr. Reeves, and I just would encourage, and I think one of the challenges with this, as I tried to allude to earlier, is appraisals, right? So we know that there are very, very distinct areas where you're going to be able to actually build a home and for it to appraise out. That's a big challenge outside of basically about 3 neighborhoods: Tolliston, Miller, and parts of West Glen Park. Outside of that, it is very difficult to get sufficient appraised value to build a new construction. You can't really build a house for less than $150,000 to $200,000 minimum. And that's often not a house that's desirable to the generation that we're trying to bring in, the folks moving to the Crown Points, the Scherervilles, et cetera, in terms of what their expectations are. So I would encourage, and you probably already are doing it, that you're working with bankers and seeing potentially how they can use their CRA credits, if possible, in order to increase that loan to value ratio, because they're definitely going to have to make some kind of incentive to lend higher than the appraised value in order for that to work. Certainly for 4,000, that's a lot of construction, right? And so that's just one word of advice I would give on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are actually doing that. We're meeting with the chairman of BMO here soon to talk about that, and it's going to be one of the asks. He's stationed in Chicago. Eric Smith. We do have it on the radar to meet with him and local banks to so they understand our market and can do just exactly what you said. So we're trying to do a comprehensive plan that includes all aspects of buying here, so it's made can be easily done. We don't want to leave kind of quote unquote hanging chads where we'll exempt someone. So we've watched this too long to sit on the shelf with not attracting people here. The key to the revitalization of Gary is people living here. As in the hotel business, heads in beds.
Right, and I just want to make one last comment very quickly. I really recommend that the city considers doing some kind of realtor's breakfast, realtor's lunch. I know Hammond does that every year. And I say that because we have a lot of realtors who are, they're working with clients. They don't necessarily know a lot about the city or what's on the horizon, but it's a great way to get our word out, get our message out about whether it's the Fix One, Get Two, whether it's the community development dollars for new homeowners, whether it's plans to develop certain areas. I had an incident this summer where a realtor from, I think, Crown Point, she was afraid to come to the city. It was my listing and her client, but she wanted to pay me to show her client the house. She was afraid to come to the city. And so because of a bad experience she'd had in the past. But I think we need to, as part of our opening up, really reach out to the real estate community and regularly keep them abreast of what's happening and what's on the horizon, because, they are the eyes and ears. And I will tell you, I'm increasingly seeing investors from California, from Texas, all over the place, Oak Park, who are buying homes not in Miller, but in the 2nd district and the 3rd district in the last 2 weeks, and buying them cash very often, above $100,000. So we certainly have eyes on us, but we need to make sure we get our word out to key stakeholders who can help bring in more folks. But thank you.
Are you just trying to get breakfast there?
Well, now will have to be a Zoom breakfast.
Did you want some crepes, Suzette? What exactly do you want for breakfast? We'll get it.
It's a good outreach.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I'm just joshing you.
I know.
But if Chair, can I make one more comment, because it's something that I couldn't get on earlier about the park. The park revenue was up 325%, and if you allow for as Mr. Godwin said, the only show in town, 15 to 20%, we are still up substantially over last year, 2018 and 2019. The 2018 figures for the parking lot were somewhere around $25,000. In 2019, it was $77,000. In 2020, it was $177,000. And this was done, how was this done? By managing it more correctly, using a cashless, trying to go cashless, and making sure that each one of these steps was managed. So the money went to where it was supposed to be. We collected it, but it also was deposited accordingly. So it's more than, just happenstance. This was a targeted area that we leverage our natural resources for revenue. And that's something we will continue to do. And in the pavilion, you'll see substantial revenue gain this year, as we will change the way we're doing things, and look forward to that facility to be rented 99.9% of the time. You heard it here. I'm dropping the phone.
Well, don't drop.
Don't go away too soon.
Mr.
Chairman,
if you can also look at putting some more shelters out there, Marquette. What I have seen, a great number of people come out there, and we only have 3 main shelters on the big area of the park. And if we can increase that, the traffic is definitely coming in, as you outlined. And I'm liking that you all have went to pretty much.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question and one statement. What is Fix One, Get Two? Tell me what that is.
Okay. You want me to explain it or somebody else?
Whoever knows the answer, I don't care. Whoever has the answer.
So the Fix One, Get Two is a program out of redevelopment where we put out a request for proposals for contractors, licensed contractors in the city of Gary. We will give them a property out of a pool of properties in the area of Etna First, which is the beta or test area. If they fix that one and they successfully get it back on the tax rolls or build it, they can rent it, they can sell it, they can live it into themselves, or, you know, whatever, you know, the objective is to get it back on the tax roll, and they have certain design standards. They just can't put up a shack. That we will then give them 2 more. If they're successful with those 2, we'll look at talking to that group for tracts of 25 or more, because we have a lot of people who want to develop more than one. They want to do whole blocks, but we're making them perform, and there's lots of clawbacks in the contract. There's lots of things that they have to do. We put it out there, and we had 23 groups.
Okay, I don't, you're giving me more detail than I'm asking.
I'm a detailed guy, so I'm gonna give it all to you, Counselor.
Well, I assure you, your detail is far shorter than mine, but way far shorter. Let me ask another question. Is part of your program giving the first responders any kind of priority, your police and firemen that are outside?
That's a separate program that we're working on now for police, fire, and educators.
I'm more concerned with the people we have direct responsibility and control of, that with the police and firemen. Is
Yes.
that a separate program for them? I'm saying give them higher priority. I do not see the teachers as being one and the same. In other
Okay.
words, the people that we pay, that we being the city, from our tax dollars, it'd be nice if they were here. And that's what I'm suggesting. We give them a separate incentive. I think the first time I heard of it was being done in Hammond, Indiana. And I thought it was a good program. Not only that, you would assist them in some ways when you're dealing with BMO, JP Chase, whoever you're dealing with, to see if you can assist them in even getting some better financial deals out of those institutions if there are police and firemen.
Yes, we have something in the pipeline for that. Yes.
When do you think it'll come out of the pipeline? When do you think they have that program completed?
In June.
June of this year?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any other question by council members?
Well, Mr. Chair, mine is not related to this ordinance, so I will defer to anyone who has a question about this ordinance.
Well, since yours not, I'll go to, is there anyone from the public on that would like to speak? This is a public hearing on this. Okay, not seeing no one. I'll go back to you, President Godwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few issues, some of which was gently discussed in the Finance Committee meeting, but since we have an ensemble of redevelopment and economic development personnel on, it seems relevant. A few things in terms of, I want to confirm that the actual agreement for the sale of the Genesis Center will be next week. And what date will that be? The signing of that agreement?
We don't have an exact date. It's with the title company now, because there was over 50 PIN numbers with that piece of property. And because it's a municipal building, they have to go back 50 years. So we're anticipating Wednesday of next week, Councilman Godwin.
Thank you. And which title company is it?
Community, maybe?
Community,
Maryville?
community title.
Macaulay. Okay, community title. And I guess my other question is, just refresh my memory, the clawback provision is that they have how much time to pay the balance? I think it's the $2.1 million roughly is the total acquisition cost. They, I think, have made a $150,000 down payment.
Correct.
And they have how long to pay the balance?
160 days, I believe it is.
Okay.
180 days. I'm sorry, 180 days.
And does the agreement allow for the redevelopment board to offer an extension?
No extension.
Okay, so basically, automatically, the property will revert back to redevelopment if within 180 days of the signing of the agreement, they have not offered the balance due. That's correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
And thank you. And when do you anticipate that a request will come before the council to change the zoning from convention civic use to, I guess they're going to do some assemblage there?
So the zoning is already M1. We will not have to come to the council.
You said the zoning is already manufacturing for the Genesis Center?
Yes, it's already M1. It was done. It was done in 1957. We've already researched that. It is M1 already, so we will not need any zoning changes.
Can someone send me a copy of the zoning?
Eric Boria, the zoning director, could probably send you that. Yes.
I'd like to see that because I guess that would also be whatever the last, someone is, the last, getting an echo. But anyway, the last approved zoning plan for the city should reflect that as well. And I don't recall that being manufacturing, right? Because we've had successive zoning maps for the city. So if at one point prior to constructing the Genesis Center, which certainly 1950s would be before it was constructed, it was manufacturing, I would imagine that it has now been changed to non-manufacturing.
No, it was actually the history. The history starts in 1933. We've done and then it was changed to M1 in, I believe it's 57, and it hasn't been changed from that since then. And as you know, that there's a lot, some of the maps may have had mistakes, but what we ask Eric Boria to do is to drill down to ensure that this was an M1. So what we're trying to do on any of these deals that we're doing is to try to cover all of the bases and to ensure that there's less or no encumbrances to building and being shovel ready for developers.
So let me just ask, so when was the last zoning map, and Attorney Pohl may be able to help us on this, approved for the city?
The last zoning map, I think the zoning map has just been continuously updated. I don't think there's been an approval whereby it's approved by the council, not to my knowledge at least. They do comprehensive plans every so often, or at least once a decade. But as far as the zoning map, it's just a continuously living document.
So actually, you're right, Attorney Pohl. So in 2020 or 2018, the new comprehensive plan came out, or they wrote it, finished it in 2019, that included a zoning map, and that we're still updating. That will be finished, I think, in the spring. So that will include that area.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You can go ahead and interject. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a question. We went through it very quickly. You said there were 50 something on the Genesis Center. I was unclear, Mr. Reeves, when you said 50 something.
We discovered when the Genesis Center was first put up for sale that they never combined the key numbers to build that center. So I guess we thought we had done it 2 years ago, but I guess it wasn't finished. And I think Attorney King can support me here. So there's still 20 existing key numbers for that one parcel that are all separate. So because of that, they have to explore and research all 50 key numbers.
Why wouldn't that come down with a title policy? You're not asking for a title policy to be delivered, and you're about to sell something?
But they can't issue the title policy until they do the research on the separate 50 key numbers.
Well, that would be the title company would do that. You're not.
That's what they're doing. That's what I'm asking.
You're attempting to bring down a title policy. The insurance company is doing it.
Yes.
The way you're answering, Mr. Reeves, is if it's two different people. Let's assume
it's community title.
They're going to bring down the title policy. They are doing the research, I hope.
Yes, they are doing the
So they
research.
will provide the insurance.
Correct.
Okay, they will do it, yes. The way you were
Right.
explaining, sound like you were talking about two different people. I said to break down the title policy, you said they're investigating. Yeah, that is the job of the title company.
My gracious apologies, Counselor.
No, I don't need that. That's of no value to me.
I'm just
Give that
apologizing.
to Mr. Godwin. He likes that.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question. So if in fact the Genesis Center is zone manufacturing, was there ever a zoning variance requested for the Genesis Center? Since if it was, obviously the Genesis Center was not manufacturing, so its existence as a convention or visitor center would seem to be out of order or an illegal use without there having been a zoning variance issued. So I'd like to see where a variance was granted to the Genesis Center, allowing it to be used differently than manufacturing.
It may not have been.
So
You're absolutely right. It may not have been. I mean, you'll see lots of instances, Counselor, where it's a lot of things were in non-compliance that the city was involved in that they just didn't memorialize. It could have been that way. But yes.
Because I'm looking at the map and the one that's on your website, it's very odd because I guess where the county courthouse is zone B31 business. So even that appears to be odd, but I guess it's an office use. But I'm very curious about whether a zoning variance was ever sought, because obviously I don't, maybe back in U.S. Steel days, but it was not in recent memory used for manufacturing.
So there's two, and actually, in fact, there's two lots that the county is encroaching upon that they are using that are owned by the city of Gary, the Genesis, and they're included in that sale.
Oh, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Right.
Exactly.
Interesting. And my only last question, a resident asked me about the article that came out about Ivanhoe and that sale, and it mentions that a residence hall, I guess, will be built. And the article could be inaccurate, but it mentioned, and I saw it myself, something about they would build a residence hall on the Ivanhoe site. And this particular resident's concern was that, that suggests they were going to be bringing in workers. I've been to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and obviously only 20% of the country is actually Emiratis. They bring in everybody else, 80% laborers around the region who do the work. So her concern was, are they going to bring in workers, house them on the property, and have them to work at this manufacturing facility doing the cell phones? Are you familiar with the residence hall?
So no, I can say that a residence hall will not be on that facility. What we'd like to do, Acumen would like to co-develop with a developer market value homes that their people that they attract could buy.
Okay, on that property.
No. In the area, in the neighborhood, within the city of Gary, not on that property.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one question I'm getting a little, is our legal department involved with Mr. Reeds and all of these projects? Is someone from our legal department, Corporation Counsel's office?
We have Mr. Pohl on and.
Yes,
King.
Mr. Attorney King and Mr. Pohl.
Let me, I'm sort of, thank you, Ms. Reed, but now I am asking directly, Mr. Pohl, what is your responsibility to Corporation Counsel's office to these projects that have been discussed for the last 15, 20 minutes?
For the Genesis Center?
Yeah, yes, there are various projects, sales, the workers, a whole lot of things are going on. It seems like lawyers should be involved somewhere.
Well, given that this was redevelopment property, that was mostly Mr. King. With the redevelopment commission.
Okay. So Mr. King is working with the title company. Is that correct, Mr. King?
That's right. It's at the title company, and as you know, we're waiting for the exceptions and whatever.
Right. Who will clean title? You will be cleaning the title, Mr. King?
I'll be working on that from the seller's perspective. If we're going to sell it, we got to have clear title.
Right. So you will be doing
right,
cleaning that title.
Right.
Anything else by any other council member?
Well, let me just.
You muted.
I'm sorry, I said I had a last question, but I mean, $50,000 is extremely low for that much acreage. I understand they're intended to do development, and I understand there's also a clawback in that agreement as well. I think if a structure is not actually built. But I would like to know, was there an appraisal done for the former Ivanhoe site? And if so, what was the appraised value for the site? It surely had to be more than $50,000.
Yes. So our strategy, yes, there is. We get 2 appraisals for every piece of property that is sold. That's a requirement by statute. We take the medium of that and advertise it. So what in any economic development or redevelopment, people come and ask for tax abatements or inducements. We are trying to, because we have such a glut of property, we are trying to use the property as the inducement, so we don't have to effectuate the assessed value, so we can still collect the taxes. So that's that property at a lower value is the gimme, meaning Hammond's gonna, offer some tax abatements or something. And Gary, we're not doing that. This administration doesn't want to do that, and we haven't to date. I.e., the golf course, $9 million free of any inducement. Other things will be free of any inducement.
So can I ask as a follow-up? So what was the appraised value? It's public record. So
It is public work, but I don't recall. I don't want to misspeak because I would be held to it, I'm sure. But I can send you the appraisals. I can share those with you.
thank you. Attorney King, do you recall?
I don't recall either.
Attorney Pohl, do you recall?
I do not, no.
Okay. So was it greater than $50,000? I'm assuming
Absolutely.
it was.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes.
So I guess the question is that we're talking about assessed valuation. And until a structure is built on it, the most recent comp is the purchase price. There's not very much like-kind property nearby. So, well, what do we presume the assessed? It's probably zero right now because it was a public nonprofit property. They may have put some value on it. They weren't getting any tax, but what do we presume the assessed value to be, say, next year for this property? Because that will be the value on which they'll pay taxes. So do we have I'm sure we've given them in our prospectus kind of an idea of what kind of tax they could assume to be paying.
Yes, I don't have that number. So each one of these deals has that. So, when we look at the size of the facility and acreage and what they put in it, then yes, we have those figures. I don't have them right here because certainly it's like 8 o'clock at night and I don't have it at my desk.
But I'm just curious about if we're looking at a $50,000, I don't know what the assessed value is going to be, but I know that happened even with a property that is getting a tax abatement, right? With, I can't think of the name of the company, where we had to, earlier this year, go back and expand the abatement because once they got, what was that? Alliance Steel.
Yep.
When they got their assessed value, it was much higher than they anticipated. So they then came back and asked for longer, I guess, maybe to cover that period. So I'd be curious to know what we told them their assessed value is going to be, because so this really hope that is far higher than $50,000. It should be in
absolutely
the millions.
Sure, it will be in the millions, and it's that's why one of the reasons why we're doing it this way. To have, this takes care of a couple of things. You have to look at it from a 50,000 foot view. It takes care of property that's currently sitting fallow with a fence around it. So the value to us is high, but the value to get it onto the tax roll is the salient point here. Some tax is better than no tax at all. And
I agree. But I would also just say, I don't know how far and wide we looked in terms of marketing the property beyond Acumen, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but at the same time, we do want to make sure that we're not selling ourselves for cheap, right? I mean, we're talking about less than, it's more acre. I thought it was 18 acres. It's actually more than 18 acres. So we're talking about less than $3,000 an acre. That is extremely cheap for commercial real estate. And so,
So we are not selling ourselves cheap. Each deal is different. If you remember, the prior administration was going to sell Gleason at 20 cents an acre. We are getting $1.92 an acre. So our thought process and
wait a
strategies.
minute, $1.92 an acre.
I believe
That doesn't
that's-
make sense. Huh?
Square foot. I'm sorry, square foot. I
Oh,
apologize.
okay.
I misspoke.
Okay, I was going to say, if that's the case, I'm going to have to get
Are
off
there
the council.
attorneys involved in these projects?
Yes, there are attorneys. Yes, there are
Well,
attorneys.
and that building at
On
Gleason
each
has-
individual project, is there an attorney
Yes,
involved?
absolutely. On each individual project, there are attorneys involved. Attorney King has been a diligent attorney for the redevelopment commission for the last 10 years and has, everything is vetted through an attorney.
Okay.
Right? That's not
Who
my skill set.
negotiates? Do an attorney negotiate?
Yes, we do negotiate. I do
No,
negotiate.
not we, unless you have acquired very recently a law license. I'm not talking about what you do. Do Mr. King negotiate?
No, he does not.
Who negotiates for the city?
I do. And you don't need to require a law license.
Please don't explain that to me. Please don't. Please don't. Yeah, Monkey understand the color system could do it. I'm not talking about that. I'm simply asking who is doing it. So you're doing it for the city. You're negotiating these projects, these 20 projects, and then it's passed to Mr. King.
Yeah, well, it actually, the senior advisors of the mayor look at it. And then we look at it again, and then it goes to Mr. King and AJ Bentner, who's over redevelopment. That's the process.
If he's not needed, why do we even bother with Mr. King?
I didn't say he's not needed, sir. He doesn't fulfill, he's not an economic development practitioner. I am.
Well, let me ask a question. Who's the attorney that's representing Acumen?
They have several, but locally here, Darnell Lyles represents them locally.
Isn't he part of the advisory team, of the mayor's senior advisory team?
That's correct.
That would be a conflict, wouldn't it?
No, he's not in on the negotiation part of that deal. He excludes himself.
Okay. But he does have professional service contract with the city.
He does, but it's he.
As the attorney to the mayor,
He's not. I haven't read his contract, but when we're negotiating, and he is the local attorney for them.
Well, who negotiates if it's not him?
He is the negotiator. He is the attorney for Acumen.
Listen to the question, Mr. Reeves. Listen to the question. Who negotiates with the city redevelopment when he excludes himself? Who then negotiates?
Then Acumen does have other people in there. They have other attorneys. That's not the only person who actually a gentleman named Henri Gardner, a woman named Mustafa. I mean, there's a whole lineage in that deal of people that I had to talk to.
But Gardner's not an attorney.
He's not an attorney, but that doesn't preclude him from negotiating.
Right, but I'm saying attorneys deal with attorneys, right? So there's a levity there, right? I mean, so attorneys negotiate with other attorneys, right? So ideally, Attorney King would be present representing redevelopment in the negotiation with, I guess, Attorney Lyles, right, on behalf of their respective clients. So there are contracts involved, right? And these attorneys are putting their imprimatur, I suppose, on those contracts, reviewing those contracts, negotiating those contracts. So while you may have a team of folks, when it relates to a legal contract, there should be an attorney present really at all times between those two sides.
So when it comes down to finalizing a deal, all the attorneys are at the table. I negotiate the original deal and or, this is what we're going to do. This is what, we're going to offer. But I don't have the last say. If Gilbert King or Rodney Pohl says that it's something that's prohibitive or it's not in goodwill, we don't do it. But in economic development, in the very embryonic stages and through the middle, attorneys are not needed.
Do you have an error and omission insurance yourself, Mr. Reeves?
Not myself, no.
It would seem to me that whoever's negotiating should have some type of policy to protect the city, error and omissions.
Okay, that's something we'll look into.
I would hope Mr. Pohl would look into it, or Mr. King would look into this error and omission policy as to whether or not one should be purchased by the city when Mr. Reeves is negotiating, not Mr. Reeves looking whether he should have one himself.
The city can look into that. I mean, by and large, the city is probably the city's self-insured, pretty much across the board, except for various a couple of protective policies that are either required by contract or otherwise. But I mean, the city's just never had that type of insurance in any under any circumstances. And Mr. Reeves is not the first individual from redevelopment or economic development to engage in negotiations without the presence of an attorney. Initially, as he had stated, in the embryonic stages, it's mostly hammered out by the attorneys after the negotiations have been dealt with, as are most contracts with the city of Gary. A lot of times, these contracts are, between department heads and vendors, things of that nature, and then they come, they're proposed to the law department, for which then we review. We simply do not negotiate every single contract that the city of Gary engages in.
I think that the issue that Councilman Brewer and Councilman Lay is raising is that the city can't negotiate with itself, right? So if obviously there's a relationship between the mayor of the city and the redevelopment commission, because the mayor appoints the majority of the members of the redevelopment commission. And therein, the majority of the members of the redevelopment commission choose who the attorney will be for the redevelopment commission. Then on the other side, you have a professional services contract, and I've read it, whereby the attorney for Acumen, right, is also the attorney for the mayor's office, right? So you have this, to an extent, there's the possibility of negotiating with yourself, right? And the potential that the third party has an insider advantage. I'm not saying that's the case, right? I mean, but there's almost a dual agency, if you will, right? You cannot be the agent. You cannot be the agent, I guess, for both principles, if that makes any sense. Like, you don't have one principle.
That's correct. I think under certain circumstances, as long as there's full disclosures and there's waivers between the parties, and I can't speak to whether or not those waivers are before that question gets asked. I don't know whether or not those waivers have been acquired at this point. But as long as, and I know Attorney Lyles to be a very competent attorney.
Me too.
I would assume that he would understand that the implications of the potential conflict of interest. I'm sure it's one of the first things he thought of. And it's simply not the first time that something like this has occurred. I'm sure with the city of Gary, when you have an attorney that represents, either the commissions, the boards, the council, you're going to have an instance where they also represent other parties. And, as long as there's always there's a potential for conflict of interest, but as long as the person does not put themselves in the position of negotiations of being on one side or the other on that particular instance, and there's a waiver by both parties, there is a method for which that relationship can still continue on, if that makes sense. So as long as Mr. Lyles is handling the work for Acumen simply from the standpoint of making filings with the county, doing everything other than working directly with the city of Gary, there's nothing to say that Acumen cannot have that, cannot engage in a contract with the city of Gary simply because he's also a vendor, he's part of the city's senior staff, given the fact that they've chosen him as their attorney, as long as he's kind of removed himself from anything that would be a conflict of interest as it pertains to that deal. Does that make sense?
No,
It
he would
does.
require a written
No,
waiver. No, that don't make sense. He would have to have a written
Mr.
waiver.
Chairman.
What has occurred? I think Mr. Williams is going to answer that question.
Yeah.
Attorney Williams?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been listening, and that's exactly the question. Did Attorney Lyles submit a waiver or some type of disclosure identifying the conflict to the redevelopment commission?
That's what I was going to say. I don't know that answer.
Attorney King?
Nor do I. Nor do I. No.
Wait a minute. If Attorney King doesn't know, nobody knows. Wait a minute. As the attorney for redevelopment, did you get a disclosure of a potential conflict from Attorney Lyles? If you don't know, no one would know.
No, I did not. But that doesn't mean that some waiver was not signed by him to the city. I did not get it personally.
The proper entity would be
Mr. Reeves is the director, right?
The proper entity would be the redevelopment commission. So I understand you saying you don't know that he didn't give it to the city. I'm asking, did you receive one?
And my answer is no.
And Mr. Reeves is the director over at redevelopment, the president. Did you receive one?
I did not personally receive one.
So we have Ms. Purtle, who's the assistant director.
And I'm not the director at redevelopment. I'm president of the board.
Right, but it falls under your community investment, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm sure. So both parties were aware of the position that Mr. Lyles has with the city, and vice versa. So
But that's
both
not
sides.
the legal standard, right? Awareness is not the standard, right?
Okay, so I'm not a lawyer. You guys are. Mr. Lyles, I'm sure, did the correct thing. As you just said, he's a competent attorney and is very aware of what his position is.
Right, and I agree, he's very competent, and I consider him a friend as well. But I guess the question is, it's a problem if no one who represents redevelopment knows whether can not be sure, but can be certain, right? That has happened. I mean, that is a problem if it has not. And I would go back even to the statute that I called forward, right? I'm not sure that the redevelopment commissioners have the authority to agree to anything, because the statute says they cannot act and must disqualify themselves if they don't even have the bond that they're supposed to have. So, I mean, absent that bond, I'm not even sure they're legitimate commissioners, and that any vote that the redevelopment commission has taken could be arguably up for grabs about whether it's actually a legal vote. Are they legal members? So there seems to be a lot of stuff that needs to be cleared up as it relates to some of these deals.
No, it doesn't relate to the deal. It relates
Well, it does, because your deal is null and void if it's agreed to by folks who are not legitimate commissioners.
Okay.
Right? I mean, the statute is very clear. You're not a commissioner without that bond. And so the votes you take mean absolutely nothing if you're not a commissioner.
So let me ask you. So I understand that. I get it. So is the objective to go back and nullify the $9 million deal? Is it the objective to go back and nullify the other economic development deals that we have on the table? I understand what you mean, that maybe some things are not there. And to my knowledge, again, I've been on the economic development board for 10 years under 3 mayors, Root Clay, for Will Freeman Wilson, and now Prince. And none of these things existed. But if we need to get it together, let's work in harmony and get it together.
It's not an objective. It's just a question, right? I mean, so
yeah, but it appears to me, it just seems very accusatory that, when you say, well, maybe these deals aren't legitimate. Maybe they're, because I don't understand. We're trying to collectively build this city back, and and I understand that you want to do it correctly, but when a statement is made that a deal may be not legitimate because we haven't acted in a certain fashion, we didn't know. I didn't know that we needed a bond. And certainly everybody in this administration wants to do the right thing, Counselor.
No, I don't question whether you want to do the right thing, but I mean, the statute is pretty clear, but I won't belabor that point. I'll look forward to answers on it. But of course, we want to see development. I may not agree with all the certain, developments.
If I could,
particular uses, but just a second, Mr. Poe. So it's not about being anti-development at all, but there are rules, right? And we're quick to point out when rules have not been followed historically, right? But we have to deal even now, right, with rules that are not being followed.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I did get confirmation from Corporation Counsel that Attorney Lyles does have a waiver from to both parties approved and on file. And in addition to that, as it pertains to your question about the zoning, it being M1 and any variances, there wouldn't have been a variance that was required because under section 123-217 for M1 limited manufacturing districts, the following land uses are authorized as permitted uses. Under number 1, any permitted use in any business district, including all residential dwelling units, churches, schools, public auditoriums, and open air assembly units and amusement places of any kind, which the convention center would have fallen under that.
Sounds good. Thank you for that. Thank you on the latter point. Thank you for that clarification. But I guess to the point earlier, right? If no one of who's holding an office in redevelopment, right? I mean, you have to have somebody that would sign it on redevelopment's behalf, right? Doesn't the waiver have to be signed by both sides? So who signed the waiver for redevelopment?
I probably would have signed it, Mr. Godwin, but I just probably wasn't. I don't recall it. It's this, I guess I'm getting a little frustrated because once we satisfy the question, then you move on to something else.
No, I don't think that the question was initially raised about whether there was a conflict, right? And then Attorney Williams said that a conflict has to be cured by a written waiver. And then the question was asked, who is in possession of the written waiver? The written waiver would assume 2 signatures, right? One for each side that's being represented. No one was aware of the existence of a written waiver. Is that correct? So certainly if one has been signed, we would want to know who signed it, but I guess also where it exists. And again, this is not about Attorney Lyles, it's about the process.
So so clearly the process worked there and it's in place. I just don't recall who holds it. And but Attorney Pohl cleared it up, and you still seem to have issue with a process.
Attorney Pohl, where does the waiver exist?
Corporation Counsel has that. He says he's got it within his files.
And who signed it on behalf of redevelopment?
I haven't seen it yet, so I can't answer that. And I mean, obviously Mr. Reeves can't either. I mean, it may have been Mr. Bittner. I'm not sure. It's probably not something that we're going to be able to get settled today, but
the issue came up, so it's just a matter of asking the question.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Lay.
Yeah, produce the waiver. An example, we're not asking the executive branch to do any different than the council did. August the 22nd, 2020. Let me make sure that's correct. There was a question, no, I'm sorry, it's 2019. There was a question concerning Attorney Williams. He produced a waiver from Spectacle, and of course, he had a waiver from the council. So what we're asking is not anything out of the extraordinary. We're asking for what we required Mr. Williams to do. We're simply asking Mr. Darnell to do the same thing. Physically, let us see it, that's all.
And to Mr. Williams's point earlier, I without calling Mr. Williams out, I did not want to bring that up, but it's one of those things that I was thinking of. Well, I know Mr. Williams has done the waivers as well for the council, and that's why I brought that up originally.
Yeah, he signed it. I was hired to ensure that it was no conflict. The way we got around the conflict, he produced it. I believe it's And don't hold me to this, I think it's rule 1.7.
Yeah.
Let me speak for Mr. Williams. Not only did Mr. Williams produce it, but he did it properly. He did it in a public forum.
Yeah.
He did it in a public forum. It is if there is a waiver, and I agree, I respect Attorney Loud greatly. It should have been produced in a public forum, not a document sent to a corporation counsel. In fact, the corporation counsel is not the proper entity. The conflict is between he and the redevelopment commission. So I don't know what authority the corporation counsel would have had to sign the conflict, but no, in fact, I mean, it's a valid point, but I'm even concerned of the mechanism in which, if it was at all published, that too is a requirement.
That I can't speak to, but I did
Well,
want
just
to
go back and do it. That's all. At least make an attempt to follow the process. Just go back and do it. That's all.
Well, if there's nothing else on the waiver, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question. Mr. Reeves mentioned the golf course deal, and I guess while we're all here, is there a status update on that? I know that, I mean, in terms of, I know it was that the agreement was signed, but do we know when the dollars are going to be received?
So right now, we are still trying to get it out of the floodplain from the Little Calumet River Basin. We are working on that. We think that we'll file the LOMR, and that's an acronym for something that I don't have it right here in front of my face, but that's a crucial step. We think that the dollars will be transacted in Q2 or 3 of this year for that.
And it's still light manufacturing is the planned use, right?
At this point, yeah, that would be M1, M2, and yes, we do know we have to come to the council for or go to the zoning BZA for appeals if that's indeed what the end user wants to do there.
Thank you.
Is there any other question by any other council members? Anyone else? Public? Right. Thank you all. I do plan on bringing this back to committee, so it will show up on third and final, but I will refer it back to committee before we can hammer out those details that we talked about earlier part with the parcels. I would like to see the parcels that with the side lot presented to the council first, that we can vote on those. If we have a number of people that's been waiting on those, I would like to see we get those out the way first. Nothing else. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night.